On a scale of 1 to 10, how well have you developed and realized your full potential? And while we're on the subject, become a more successful and self actualized individual? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because if you can get those numbers up, you'll not only be helping yourself, but your ability to help others realize their own full potential as well. And today's guest is here to help.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Antonio Garrido, has over 25 years in senior leadership positions with world-class businesses. He's an expert in leadership transformation, shaping high-performance leaders out of highly stressed and overworked leaders. And he talks about it in his book, My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. Nice to meet you, Antonio, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you ever so much. Gosh, that sounded rather interesting. That was a nice introduction. Thank you. Big fan of the podcast. So excited to be here.
I appreciate that. And I have to tell you, sometimes more as a speaker, but somebody will introduce me. I'll sit in the audience. It takes me a minute to get up and go, oh, they're talking about me. Who's that guy?
Good.
yeah. I'm impressed with him. Oh, yeah, maybe I'm a little too much in there. Anyway, great to have you in here. And with you, I want to dive right into the topic. Sometimes, we find a book, but judging by the topic of your book, I get a sense it may have found you. But just tell me how you arrived at this book.
Well, this is my third book, and I like that thought that the book found me. I think that's probably true. I'm writing another two as we speak, and actually one of them found me, the other one I'm working really hard for. So how did it find me? Well, that's a great question. I have been genuinely, Rob, incredibly fortunate to have worked for some outstandingly, I'm just going to say world-class, best-in-class leaders, more by luck than judgment, I promise you, and learned so much from them. And then for the last, 12, 14 years, I have been a leadership coach, trainer, and working with. So I've worked for some amazing leaders, and I have worked with some outstanding leaders. And every day, it's a learning opportunity, is it not? Because as one of the leaders I used to work for that said, hey, listen, the only advantage we have today over yesterday is what we've learned, because otherwise we're just a day closer to dead. Grim, but true. So I guess for, let's say, 20 years, because I am fairly ancient, for 20 years, I've been kind of writing down these really, really transformative lessons, leadership and self-development, these concepts, and just journaling and writing like crazy. And then, so I wrote two other books. And then for this book, I thought, I'm going to grab 20 years of the best leadership wisdom that I have personally experienced. It's not theoretical. It's all very, very practical and real and applied to me and our clients. And I'm going to shove it all in one place and see what that looks like. And fortunately, it looks pretty good. And people wanted to publish it. God love them. And so that's what we did. And on the back of that, we built our whole, one of our businesses, but the whole business is based on, the programs are based on the book. So so to answer your question, I guess it did find me, but it took about 20 years for it to do so. So that's, I guess, how the book came about.
Guess what? You and I share something very unique. I've done about 270 of these. I've never spoken to anybody that shares what you share with me. I actually, do a lot of road work, obviously, as a professional speaker. And I used to come home and say, oh, boy, I met this guy, or you wouldn't believe what happened to him, and I tell these stories. And I had a friend of mine who was a professor at American University. He said, you should write these things down. And so I started journaling, my friend. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to book you. Wait a minute, it gets even tighter how you and I share. I'm writing these things down, and I refer to myself, and I want everybody to hear this because this is what he's talking about right now. When you journal, you become what I call methodically observant. Now you're almost programmed to stop, think, and write. Anyway, 20 years, I had the same thing going. And the only difference was I never wanted to look at them because I thought, oh, I'll be editing history. And there was my mistake in something that you found before I did. By going back and looking at them, you see that for every 10 stories, 9 of them might not be that hot, but one of them really is deeper. And I'm guessing that's exactly sort of the path that found me. And I don't talk about my books. I won't even tell you which one, no Jollis books. But one of my books is exactly what you did. It's cherry picking some of those stories. And I just admire the fact you did it.
Well, thank you. It's, I've seen, I always try and pay attention to people who've been successful in their field, irrespective of the field. They don't have to have been, leader of industry. They can be, a doctor for the NHS, or even, a nurse. They could be a car park attendant, right? And anything. And I've always tried to take time to ask them things like, what's your biggest life lesson? And if you had, if you were going to give advice to a brand new baby, what kind of things we start? So I've always had this kind of approach to life, and it came from my dad, and I'll tell you why if you're interested in that a little bit later on. But so I also subscribe to, there is an app you can get. It's called Masterclass, right? And it's kind of like the biggest and the best brains. Anyway, so I was listening to Steven Spielberg, right, giving an interview once, and like him or not, he's decent director, right? he's pretty good. And he would say that the difficulty he would have with creating a final finished movie is what to cut, right? What ends up on the cutting room floor would always upset him, because there was always some good stuff there, right? And he had to take out the very, very best bits, but the bits that he kind of discarded, it would upset him to get, to throw that stuff away. So when I went over 20 odd years, like journaling, right, and created this book, which is fairly meaty, it's probably about 400 pages long. There's 400 pages of leadership lessons and growth and development there. I was just so sad about what I didn't include. And so then people that work for me said, well, do another book. I said, no, that's now done. Okay, we have to do something else now, right? So so you should have gone back. The reason I started journaling, shall I share that story with you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and there are people listening, and some of your audience probably already, like you and like me, already journal, and some definitely don't, and some are thinking, yeah, what's the point, right? So one of those incredibly inspirational leaders that I mentioned just before, he introduced me to journaling. I got a job, and really I wasn't ready for the job. It was political more than anything else. I was kind of over punching my weight, and I got this job. It was for so I was leading a large, what you would call a Fortune 60 company, like a top 60 PLC.
Okay.
Kind of shouldn't be running that business, but anyway, the fact of the matter is that, somebody said, tick, you're it, and now I was doing it. And the group CEO called me into his office on day 2 or 3. Or rather, he left a handwritten note on my desk, because this was kind of like pre-internet and so on, an email and so on. And I thought, crikey, day 2 and I'm already being fired. They found me out, right? So I went to go and see him. And he said, hey, Antonio, quick question for you. He said, do you journal? And of course I didn't, and never had, and never even considered it. So I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, why not? And in my usual pithy kind of way, Rob, I said, probably because I'm not a 16-year-old Victorian schoolgirl, right? That's why else would I
have to tell you, I didn't journal for many years. Again, we share something because I always heard it called a diary, and I went, I'm not writing a diary.
Yeah,
and I sort of associate it with what a child would do. So back to you.
16-year-old Victorian schoolgirl, right? Not there's anything wrong with any of those, but like that just wasn't who I was, right? So he said, well, do me a favor. And he looked slightly crestfallen, disappointed. He said, do me a favor. I said, yeah. He said, well, find 8 of the most successful people you can in any walk of life, anybody. You can do research, or you can ask anybody that you know personally. And I thought, okay, so what does So I thought to myself, well, who do I know that's really successful? How am I going to measure that success? How do I know who's successful and who isn't? So I started thinking about stuff. And then I also thought about, who I admired in terms of like the athletes and the sportsmen and the entertainers and people like that I also admired. And I thought, but they don't journal, do they? Right. So I asked about 6 of this list of 8. I got to 6 of them, and I asked them whether they journaled, and the first 6 of 8 said that they all did. And I thought, oh crikey, there's probably something in it then. So then I went back to him and I said, okay, all right, okay, I'm in. I don't know what to write. I don't know when to write. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to write about. But, sort of theoretically, I'm in. Can you help me? And he went, yeah, sure. Get yourself a nice journal and a nice pen and let's start. And that was, I don't know, 20 odd years ago. And here we are, where one of the cornerstones of our business and our program is, we ask our people to journal each and every day. My coach does the same, and he coaches not only presidents of companies but presidents of countries, right? And he won't, if they haven't journaled that week, and they have to take a photo of the journal and send it to him to prove it. If they haven't journaled that week, he won't coach them that week. I mean, that's how. That's how that's how much of a stickler he is about that as a principle. But so for your audience, right, that are listening, find the most successful people you can in any walk of life and ask them if they journal. And I'm going to guess, and this is entirely subjective and not objective in any way. I'm going to say most of them do, and certainly any sports person you can think of, or team or leader, Gates. Does he? Jobs, did he? Musk, does he? Right? All of them do. And is that a coincidence? Well, you decide. I don't think it is.
I don't think it's a coincidence at all. And I can hear the question being asked, so we're both going to answer it right now. Because when I talk to people about journaling, and I rarely talk about it, the first question I get is, well, what if I don't have much to write? And what I always tell people, I'd be interested in your feedback, is, the days I don't think I have much to write and put my hands on the keyboard, I'm always shocked at how much I do have and where it takes me. And the days I think, oh, I got this thing nailed, I'm going to tell the caterpillar story or whatever, it's not as creative, and it really isn't all as good. Don't ever wait for a reason to write.
Right.
Put your hands on there and just let it out. Just have a conversation. For me, it's a keyboard. For you, apparently, it's a paper and pen. I admire that.
It
But
really is.
have a conversation with that document, and those are the greatest writing moments.
I think if that's the way that some people can get in, lots of our clients, they need a structure, they need a process, they need to be guided through that until it becomes a thing. Now, the other thing that people, until it becomes habitual for them. The other thing that people worry about is like, well, how long? Like, how much have I got to write? And really, with a pen and all that stuff. And it's like, well, so I remember another guy I worked for once, and he was at the dentist, and the dentist said, you really need to floss, and he says, well, all of my teeth? He said, no, just the ones that you want to keep, right? And the point that he was making is that, we all brush our teeth every day. One imagines. Every single day we brush our teeth. And every single evening we brush our teeth, but not for very long, just a little, but every day, right? But every day, we never forget. We don't leave our birthday. We don't give Christmas a day off, right? It's every day. Neither, Rob, don't brush our teeth at all, and then on Sunday brush them for 2 hours straight, because your gums will bleed, right? So it's regular and often and a tiny bit. This isn't a heavy load. But it's very, very regular. And here's the thing. Here's the reason, I guess. I guess the best way to describe it. Just before COVID hit, interestingly enough, I was doing a talk in Florida for about 400 leaders, all industries, all sectors, all over the place, right? And all in person, right? This is why I say before COVID, right? It wasn't virtual, real people in a room, right? So we were all in a room. And so I asked 400 leaders, as I say, big and small, all verticals, all industries, all sizes, new, old, all of that stuff. And I said, by a show of hands, who here has no leadership blind spots? If you have no leadership blind spots, you can put your hand in the air. And thankfully, Rob, nobody put their hand in the air. So, okay, terrific, good. Everybody gets a thumbs up for the answer to the first question, which means that we all have some leadership blind spots, do we not? They all nod sagely and go, yes, yes, yes. I said, okay, terrific. Now, if you would do me a favor and just write down what your particular blind spots are. Aha, now here's the problem. Because if they knew what they were, then they wouldn't be blind spots, but they are blind spots because they don't know what they are. So here's the issue. How do you figure that stuff out? Because I don't know how many people you've ever led, how many people report to you directly, Rob, but I've had lots of people, right? And nobody has ever in all of the time that I've, led people, an organization, companies, divisions, and all of that kind of stuff, no one has ever come to me and knocked on the door and said, hey, Antonio, have you got 5 minutes? I go, yeah, of course. My door's always open. Come in, sit down, take the weight off. What's on your mind? And no one has ever said, well, I just thought I'd tell you, Antonio, I've been watching you over the last 6 months or so, and I think you are the most dreadful leader, the worst kind of manager I bet. You're awful in every single possible regard. They've never said that to me, right? They've never said that to me. Why? Because it's hard to tell someone they've got an ugly baby. So where's this self-awareness going to come from? How are you going to find out what these blind spots are? I mean, they're not just going to fall out of the tree and you're going to suddenly realize what they are. Here's the other thing. All of your audience that are listening, answer this question for me. Maybe you want to have a run at it, Rob. What percentage of the time do your people tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? What percentage of the time do they tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I don't want a piece of that one at all.
Right.
It depends on personality, but I think I see where you're going.
Yeah. Right. So it's not 100. Let's agree it's not 1 or 0, but neither is it 100. And so, what do we do as leaders? What's our job? We have to make decisions, right? We have to improve ourselves, improve our people, improve our business, future-proof our organization. We have to do all of these things. We have to make decisions. And nobody's going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which means that you're making decisions on partial truths and where you're going to find, how you're going to close that gap, and truth and trust and all of that kind of stuff, how you're going to develop that skill. And no one's going to do that for you. You have to do it for yourself. You've got to get yourself a coach, right? And you're going to have to start working on a program that helps you reveal and understand it. I guess it's self-awareness, it's EQ, it's about this, what did you say, methodically observant, this intentionality that we talk about a lot in the book. And journal's your place to do it. And you will be people are, once they get into the groove of it, I can't think of one person that's ever come to us and say, I'm just not loving it, I'm not feeling it. They once you make that commitment, but it is a big time commitment, but it's only the same commitment you make to your teeth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we're going to climb into this book a little bit deeper. By the way, the book's called My Daily Leadership, A Powerful Roadmap for Leadership Success.
Yeah.
Let me slow that down. I believe that's a powerful roadmap for leadership success. Okay. Now, as we do, I want to transition off and give you just, I can't leave this journaling thing alone, but I want to tell people who are listening, there are so many benefits to what you're hearing. I'm going to throw 2 at you, real fast, rapid fire. 1, if nothing else, you're going to have pages and pages of information, if you are so blessed, to maybe sit back and take a look at what you were thinking when you were in your wheelhouse of your career, when you were out there. My dad's no longer with us, but what I wouldn't give to be able to get 1 page of a journal entry out of my dad. So it's something that you really can maybe learn and study yourself, or give to a loved one, let them see it as well. But 2, I have one other quote for you. It came to me on a red eye from LA to DC. I don't know if I was awake or asleep, but I shot the journal. He's got his journal out. I shot it out of my stupor, and I said, I now understand the definition of wisdom. And wisdom to me is this: it consists of 3 things: success, failure, and a conscious knowledge of the lessons learned from each. And what a journal does because we're not waiting for a time to write. We're just having this conversation while we're being methodically observant. And I'm saying, spoke to a guy, Antonio, kind of an interesting guy. We really shared that journaling. I didn't know so many people share journaling. But I didn't know you eight out of 10 people. I learned things. And that's, you wonder why older people tend to be wiser people. They've had more experiences. What Antonio is telling us is, let's use that to our advantage. Let's slow it down, make a recording, and that way we are valuable to other individuals. We are acquiring wisdom. It doesn't have to be a success. It doesn't have to be a failure. We got them both. It just has to be taking your time to sort of figure out what the message was. That's how we get there.
Rob, I absolutely love that. One of the products that we're working on right now, one of our service products and services, if you like, is that we will take, because as I mentioned earlier, fountain pen, ink, that whole Victorian schoolgirl type thing, that our clients, because they go through this 2-year program before we leave them, kind of let them loose and do because they're in the groove at that point, is we will actually take them and leather bind them for future generations. Like, wouldn't you love, I would love if my dad is still with us, but my mum isn't, and his father, my granddad, who I met when I was a child, but not now. And wouldn't that be a tremendous legacy to leave for, people that come after you? I would pore over every single word. And my dad is a really, really wise guy. So a lot of what we talk about in this book and in our program, a lot of that stuff has come from that kind of generation, that real tried and tested old world, real good, wisdom with a bit of longevity. You said earlier that, it's that kind of wisdom from the ages. That there's a Spanish expression that says that the devil doesn't know as much as he does because he's the devil. It's because of how old he is, right? He's like comes from his age.
Is that a real quote? Is that a real quote? Did you get that right?
That's a real one. Yeah.
Sadly, it makes sense.
Yeah. So and otherwise, if there's no record of these things, but it doesn't have, then it just disappears as you do. But it doesn't have to be. Don't give yourself the pressure of, oh my gosh, unless everything I write is super sagely and like as if the Buddha himself. Don't worry about that. That stuff don't give yourself that kind of pressure as we kind of guide you through it. That stuff does reveal itself. But how many times, Rob, so I don't go more than, people tend to not go more than about 10 feet away from one of these, right? This is my mobile, right? 10 people tend to go 10, 15 feet away from one of these max, right? Well, I don't go 10, 15 feet away from my journal.
Got it.
How many people, Rob, and I'll carry it around from meeting to meeting and so on. How many people have had a great idea? You think, oh my God, that's such a great idea. Don't write it down. So they do not write it down. 3 days later, they go, crud, what was that brilliant? And it's lost. And how many great ideas have people also had that they just haven't recorded? And then what was lost to that? Do you know what I mean?
Right. It's like fool's gold. I used to tell people it's like a dream. You wake up at 3 in the morning and go, ooh, now there's an idea. Well, I'll definitely remember it in the morning.
Right.
All you remember in the morning is that you had a great idea, but you don't know what the great idea is.
No.
Again, why both of us are chanting. Be methodical about this. Don't wait to be inspired. And don't judge yourself. I just think it's one of the most valuable things. I wish I'd met you years ago. I kind of stumbled into it, but I owe my wife's cousin. That's who got me going.
Right.
But I've got probably 2,500 pages, something along that line. I'm in there. Anyway, all right. Let's talk about the book a little bit more. So you write about something called action bias. Okay, start by telling me what that is, and because I believe you consider it a pretty valuable resource, and then we'll go from there. Yeah.
So apart from people I've worked for and clients that we've had, we also did tons of research, and we looked for, what do we consider quote unquote successful companies, and companies that have done well, not just kind of reflects on their balance sheet, although that's part of it, but also kind of what their vision and their values, the core values are. Anyway, all of that stuff, right? So we kind of what we tried to do was identify a really rock solid model of leadership, and so, what successful leadership looks like in its execution. So we came up with our leadership model, and then we said, okay, well, that's great. What else have we got other than, the things that leaders focus on? But then what else? And it's interesting, isn't it? I could ask 20 different people, and I could say, hey, I've got a wedding in 8 weeks' time. How am I going to lose 8 pounds? Right? And 20 different people will tell me 20 different plans. And each plan would be terrific, and it's got something to do with, intermittent fasting or calorie restriction or drink more water or sleep better or take more exercise, blah, 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 right? You can imagine. We are brilliant. And people in a leadership position are also remarkably good at making plans. But, there's nothing as overvalued as making a plan and as undervalued as delivering on it, right? So somebody could give me a plan, a terrific plan, nuts and bolts and detail down to the ground, how to lose 8 pounds. If I don't do the thing, I'm not going to lose the rate. Then if I don't take action, right? If I don't execute, we call that action bias. The best leaders have a propensity not to think about stuff, but to actually do stuff. And they're quite prepared to take imperfect action and course correct along the way, right? They don't have to wait till it's the perfect plan before they go. In fact, some of the worst leaders do that. So we talk about this principle of ready, aim, fire versus ready, aim, and wait for the perfect situation before you fire. Neither is it ready, fire, aim, however, right? So we don't just go off half-cocked, but this principle of the most successful leaders, that's not only from the C-suite, but all the way kind of cascaded around the organization. They'll take imperfect action, that's action bias, and course correct along the way, but course correct very assiduously and rigorously. When I was learning how to fly a plane, one of the things I did a long time ago, if I was going to take off from an airport and then go and land at another airport, and I would take off and turn left on a bearing of, right? I then don't, and I know it's going to take me, 40 minutes before I get to I don't just land in 40 minutes time, do I, right? Because I won't be at that airport that I aimed for, because traffic, weather, air traffic control, lots of reasons that I have to constantly course correct. And so this principle of have a vision, make it clear, make sure everybody understands it, be absolutely crystal clear of where you want to land, take off and figure it out along the way. But don't be just throw caution to the wind. You've got to be a little bit circumspect about it, but constantly course correct. And that principle of action bias, let's go, because in business, inertia is so important, right? Good and bad. So it's like action bias is the thing that the most successful leaders have it in an organized way, and they bring everybody with them. That's why it's called leadership, because that's the ability to inspire followship, right? So people commit themselves also to the plan, but just get going. How many people have said to you, Rob, I've heard it hundreds of times, I'm going to start a business. Okay, start. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Great, do it, right? I'm going to do that. Terrific. When you're going to start, right? It's just that people have, great intentions, but sometimes pretty poor actions. And that's what action bias is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I think about, in training, for instance, we follow a similar pattern of, I can be there, work with you all you want, but if you don't implement what it is we just taught you, then I just wasted your time. And it's shocking how little time we actually spent on implementation strategies, and how intoxicating it almost is to just keep teaching you new ideas. And at the moment it feels wonderful, but you always hear what stuck a day later, what stuck a week later, what stuck a month later. And I always like the old saying, what somebody hears, they forget, what they see, they remember, what they do, they learn. And so to me, a lot of times, much like a boxer, when I'm working with a speaker or just a salesperson on a behavior, I refer to it as ring work. We just need to get you in the ring, get you a sparring partner, and we can talk about it for 4 more days, but we need to start taking and throwing some punches. And we learn a lot that way.
100%. And here's the other thing, the other big mistake that people make. So agree wholeheartedly. Here's the other thing that let's not even make it about business. Do you play golf? I mean, some people play golf. I
play a little bit. I'm pretty bad at it, but
same. I'm a bit of the Mark Twain school that it's a good walk spoiled. But anyway, so there are so many people that think, I'll watch YouTube videos about how to improve my golf swing, and I'll read books, and I'll subscribe to masterclasses and all of that kind of stuff. And all of that's terrific. But do you know what the absolute best way to learn how to improve your golf swing? It's not by watching videos or reading books. To actually get somebody that can actually help you with your. You've got to hit some balls, and someone's got to help you and go along. I had a great conversation with one of our clients a couple of weeks ago, when he was basically, it comes back to this action bias. He was saying, you're asking me to coach my people, and I don't know that, I feel a little bit of that imposter syndrome. I'm asking them to coach stuff that I might not be that's good. For example, somebody is, a CRO, for example, chief revenue officer, might be telling his sales team that, what they really need to do is make cold calls, just as a dumb example, right? And then he felt a little bit fraudulent in the fact that he never makes cold calls, doesn't know how to make cold calls, and will never, right? And so he was thinking, like, I can only coach somebody to do something if I am better than them. And I said, well, hold on a minute, just 1 second. If Rory McIlroy, he's a golfer again, right? If Rory McIlroy played golf against Michael, what's his name? Gallagher, his golf coach, right? The guy that Rory McIlroy, best golfer in the world, works with every single day to improve his golf, right? Michael. If Rory played golf against Michael, who would win?
Yeah, but I would think Rory would win.
Rory would wipe the floor with it, right? He's the best golfer in the world. But the guy that he uses every single day to make him better is not as good at golf as him, but he's a good coach, right? What he is a good coach. So a lot of our leaders, right? We have a CEO of a manufacturing company thinking, how can I coach the CFO when I'm nowhere near as good at spreadsheets as he is, right? Or how can I coach the IT guy when I struggle to update my Outlook every 6 months, right? How can I do that? And again, it's just about have a plan, work your plan, coach people, help them improve, raise the bar, improve yourself, find out where your blind spots are, find out where their blind spots are, help them with that. Everybody gets better, and the world improves. But you've got to be methodical about it. What I hate is, so you do talks, you train people, right, Rob?
Yes.
And so do I. Right? We do it all the time. What you see is here's the flip side of action bias, the point that we were just mentioning earlier. This intentionality is absolutely critical, because have you ever seen 7-year-olds playing soccer? The way that 7-year-olds play soccer.
I coach 7-year-olds. I know exactly how they play.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure you don't let them do this, but here's what 7-year-olds playing soccer looks like. The ball goes over here and 22 kids swarm to the ball. Then he goes over there and 22 kids swarm over there. Then he goes over here. Now, some CEOs run their business like that. Oh, here's the flavor of the week. Right? No, now here's what I meant. And no, here's what I meant. And people start slowing down and they don't go to it as fast, right? By the end of the 90 minutes, the ball goes over there and 3 people are sauntering to it and 2 have given up. So action bias doesn't mean tilting at windmills. It doesn't just mean going, anything that moves, try kill. So be very intentional, make a start, course correct along the way, but be very focused. Don't try and kill everybody. Just try and be very structured and organized.
Yeah, well, and in a moment I want to talk about these negative beliefs that leaders have. But to your point of you just said, I've done a little study of my own, and I found that supports what you just said, that if you look at the world of professional sports and look at the greatest coaches, they weren't the greatest players. They were far from it. A matter of fact, when you get the superstar to be the coach, they typically make bad coaches because so much is unconsciously competent. So much was sort of natural that they never really stopped and studied. But in baseball, for instance, you'd look at a typical coach. He may have played in minor league baseball, but ask him how to hit a ball. He'll tell you where to shift, how to be your weight, where your shoulders are. He's got it methodical. He bled his way to learning what he had to learn. And so I don't think it's a coincidence at all that leaders as well, if I'm going to take a lesson for somebody, I want somebody who understands this profession. I'm in the ring. I can't see me throwing these punches. I need somebody on the outside of the ring to watch.
What most leaders and most coaches are about more than anything else is mindset. It's the whole thing is about growth versus fixed mindset. It's about mindset. It's about attitude. It's about gratitude. It's about all of those kind of things. So the baseball player, the best baseball coach was never the best baseball player. Pep Guardiola, who's the coach of my team, Manchester City, he was an okay player, but he's the best coach in the world. The best tennis coach in the world is Ivan Lendl, according to the tennis people, aficionados that know. He was good. He wasn't.
I think he weakens our argument, because I remember I was a Jimmy Connors fan, and there was a time where Lendl, I don't know whether it was a 3-year period, a 5-year, but Lendl really was pretty good.
But not Federer, 20 years.
No.
Number one. No, he had his moments. Yeah, he was good. But he wasn't, he wasn't Nadal, and he wasn't Federer, and he wasn't,
All right, but let's go to that. So I'm a leader, and I whether I have imposter syndrome, but I'm carrying around these negative beliefs. Okay.
Yeah.
How do we get me out of that?
So the first thing, good question. So the first thing to do, and these come back to these blind spots and all of that kind of stuff, and this principle of truth, and nobody's going to tell you you've got an ugly baby. All of that stuff, right? This, we all have confirmation bias, and there's so much psychology associated with all of this stuff about leadership and growing, yourself, your people, and your organization. The best advice I can give you, which is not really the piece of advice, because everybody wants that super duper quick,
Right. Yeah. Magic pill. What's the magic pill? What do I swallow? Right.
So the magic pill is, the first thing you've got to do is have an objective rather than a subjective look in the mirror, right? So it's like you go to the doctor, and the doctor will take an MRI and an X-ray and a blood test and some history before they say, here's the medicine you should be taking. Because if they give you a prescription and haven't done all of that, don't take it, right? Because they're a quack. So the first thing to say, and we say this all the time, is look, get assessed, take an assessment, because you don't know it. No one's going to tell it to you. And whilst, when you're a 3 or 4 year old and your mother sat you bouncing on her knee and telling you you're the most wonderful, creative, intelligent, handsome, most gorgeous creation in the history of the universe, whilst I'm not saying she was lying to you and she meant it when she said it, but I don't know that she was quite true, right? So first of all of our beliefs, all of our values, all of that kind of stuff, we've learned. We weren't born with it, we've learned it. And some of it helps us, some of it works for us, and some of it's self-limiting, right? And we don't know what those things are. So take an assessment, right? It doesn't have to be our assessment, although our assessment is pretty good, but there are assessments. And I'm not just talking communication type assessments or Myers-Briggs, those kind of things, or DISC. What I'm talking about is take an EQ assessment, emotional intelligence, take a take a blind spot, self-awareness kind of assessment. There are a few. Start there. Accept that what it's telling you is true, okay? Because people when we're giving our assessment feedback, everybody that has, reasonable self-awareness, we're going through it and they go, yeah, that's probably, yeah, I do that. Yeah, okay, fair cop, okay. Yeah, you're probably right. Those people, the when we see their assessments and their self-awareness is like in the gutter, we always think, this is going to be an arm wrestle, right? And we say to them, yeah, so do you ever see this as an issue? And they go, no. Do you ever see that as an issue? Not me. Other people, but not me, right? And so because they have low self-awareness. And then we say, hold on, time out. Are you married? Yeah. Go show your wife. Call me back next week. Show this report to your wife. See what she says, right? And then they invariably bring me back and go, okay, let's talk, right? Because okay, they don't see it. So it's called a scotoma, by the way, which is something that because you see it so often, it's now you are blind to it because it's something that you do day in and day out, and you are habitually hurt with people. You don't see that you are because that's just your MO. So back to your question. First thing, take an assessment, right? And accept that it's true. If you pick a good one, don't take 15 till you find one you like. Just take one and just take it and accept that that's our starting point. And then kind of figure out, okay, this is the airport we're at. Where do we want to get to? What's our destination look like? Okay, now how we're going to figure out how to get there. The other thing is, as you know and I know, Rob, we much prefer if there's 15 things to resolve, okay? And it could be people development, it could be planning, it could be strategic management, it could be conflict resolution, it could be resource allocation, whatever it is, right? Just pick 3 things and focus on them like a lunatic till you've figured those things out and then move on. Don't try and fix 20 things all at once. If you're, I don't know how old you are, but let's imagine we're talking to somebody, they've got their own business, it's a small business, they've been running it for 5 or 6 years for the sake of argument. Let's imagine they're in the mid-40s. It's taken 40 odd years to look like that. You're not going to fix that in 5 minutes. So don't try and fix 15 things. Pick 3 things and then intentionally, methodically, observantly,
Let me jump in. I love that, by the way, when I work with people and even giving feedback. So let's talk about maybe a leader trying to help one of their people that they're managing. You can't give them 15 things. You can't take a document and fill it up and say this. Nothing's going to get fixed. It takes a lot of discipline. I actually work in 2s, believe it or not. I'll take 2 things that they're doing well and talk about that, only because half the time they don't know they're doing it well. I can't guarantee I'm going to see that again. So let's cement that. That's not too hard to do. And by the way, that begins to get people to believe that I'm really here to help you and I'm always going to be in balance for you. I'm not here to beat you up. And then you say 3, I'm going to go 2, we'll meet at 2.5. Doesn't matter to me. We're both on the same wavelength, which is it's going to be a very small list of what we're looking for. And it doesn't end with, so I need that and that. Now we have time because our list is so small to say, now how are we going to get there? When are we going to check back on this? What do you need from me to help get that accomplished? So whether we're having that conversation with our head or another individual, you keep that manageable as you're preaching. And I'm just nodding my head going, damn right. You'll see the dial will start moving. Now, next time we meet them, let's take the next 2 on the list. But that's the way it works.
Yeah. So let's be methodical, be intentional and all that kind of stuff. And don't try and fix everything. Because we're all a work in progress. None of us are perfect. The other thing is that I don't care who you are. One of those things has to be coaching others, developing others. You have to become a super duper. If you're a leader, you have to become a good coach. And what a lot of leaders do is they manage with a nice pair of slippers on, right? So they get nice tonality and all of that kind of stuff. And they'll say, hey, Tom, you might want to think about doing this and perhaps say that to him and suggest this and then see what he says. In my experience, that might be the way to go. That's still not coaching. That's still the use of directed authority. That's still telling people to do something. They don't buy it, right? When you tell them, they don't buy it. There's 4 rules of leadership. One is they never believe what you tell them. They rarely believe what you show them. They'll often believe what someone else tells them, but they always believe what they tell themselves. And so do you. So it's about guided discovery. So we have to help people recognize in themselves their issues in the same way that you're working on yourself. You've got to help them work on themselves, and they've got to coach. So if a client of ours says, yeah, they're not that interested in learning how to, self-coach and then coach others, then we won't take them as a client. If they won't, because nothing happens
smart
to people.
Yeah, you're smart. I mentor people who are in career transition, and one of the questions I ask right out of the gate is, I'm going to make that boss, that company, 90% culpable, guilty. They're, I got it. They weren't. Most people don't leave a job because it was so good. So, but I say, just give me one thing that you do differently. And when they go, honestly, I didn't do anything. It was them. I pick up my stuff. I'm very dramatic, and I go, unfortunately, I can't help you. And they go, wait, because that is what we call victim syndrome. And I guarantee you, that's probably the plumber. That's the next door neighbor. Everybody's on that list of you didn't do anything and they do all this. It's so healthy, actually, to do what you're doing and to just sometimes push back and go, I might not be the right person for you. Because I guarantee you, when you say that, I wasn't in the room. I just know what it looks like for me. All of a sudden, things get a little bit more sober and wait, sit. Okay, ask the question again. And you just did a beautiful piece of coaching.
One of the things, here's a real practical thing that your listeners can do today, in this very minute. And do you remember that guy that said, do you journal? I said, no, because I'm not 16-year-old Victorian schoolgirl, that guy. Once we got that going, he then called me into his office again. And he said, comes back to this self-awareness that we've been talking about. He said, have you ever worked, me notwithstanding, he said, have you ever worked for a dreadful boss? And I go, oh, yeah. And I imagine that everybody's listening to this knows what a dreadful boss kind of looks, smells, sounds, feels, and tastes like, right? So have you ever worked for a dreadful boss? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, terrific. And he gave me a piece of paper and a pen, and he said, will you write down what a dreadful, the characteristics of what does just awful look like in terms of a boss? And I went, okay. And then you can imagine the list. Rob, it's going to be, micromanage, plays favorites, blows hot and cold, inconsistent, whatever, right? You can imagine what that list of dreadfulness looks like. So I wrote 4 or 5 things and I slid it back. He said, yeah. He said, write some more, and slid it back again. So then I wrote a few more things, right, about what doesn't develop with people, doesn't communicate, right? Whatever, right? So another 4 or 5 things, slid it back. He said, great, just give me a few more. And then I wrote another few. And he said, and he looked at this list and he said, you're exactly right. That is what a terrible, terrible, terrible leader, that's what a terrible boss looks like. And I felt quite proud of myself. And I went, yeah, good. And that list will be different for everybody, but generally directionally the same. He said, will you do me a favor? I said, yeah, of course. What? Name it. He said, would you promise me, whilst ever you're running my company, you don't do any of the things on this piece of paper, right? And I went, yeah, okay, good. And he said, now carry it with you at all times. And anytime I see you in the corridor, in the canteen or whatever, we'll start, drag your list down and we'll talk about it, right? We'll talk about, the last time you did any of those things. And you kind of almost like, it's kind of, we don't talk about it in this way in the book, and we don't really talk about it in this way, but it's kind of like a leadership charter that you make with your people, right? It's like one of the best ways to start to figure out how to improve is to define what does dreadful look like, right? Then go the other way, right? And when you find yourself, I did it today, Rob, when you find yourself being short with people, right? once you've declared that that's a thing that isn't going to be your MO. I did it today. I sent an email to somebody at speed. Horrible. Sent it. Send. And then I took 3 or 4 steps away from the laptop, and I thought, that isn't world class. That's beneath me. That's not A star. That's C minus. I went back to the laptop, and that's what this journaling does. That's what this self-awareness does. That's what this constant reflection and this reflective and reflexive practice does. It helps you in the moment, instead of looking back in hindsight and go, could have done this, should have said that, maybe I should have done this instead. You do it in the moment, but I didn't do it quickly enough today because I was in a rush. And I went back and apologized. And my apology copied everyone that was also copied on that email. That wasn't just to the individual, And I said that it may have sounded snarky. I think it did. That wasn't my intention. What I meant to say was this, and you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate everything you do. And that, when you do it, then in the moment, so hindsight leads to insight, which leads to foresight, and then I won't do it again. And that's what journaling and intentional.
You're bringing up some great points, and we're going to begin to wrap up. But a couple of thoughts. First of all, I do this. I'll tell you when I'm susceptible. So people are listening. Just watch out for this one. It's when we're going through 30, 40 emails. We just came out of a meeting that just stacked up, and we're just kind of rocking and rolling, going, all right, Antonio, bring the thing. I'm just like, just throwing cards up. That's when they get a little bit cold. And if you don't catch it, people will come up and they'll say, you're in a bad mood. You okay?
Yeah.
No, I was just kind of, so it's the tone. We have to, know who we're communicating with. We got some dominant people we don't have to be so soft with. But the social people out there, we got to slow down with. The analytical people, we have to put some numbers to it. So one is, I think we got to slow down.
But that's that EQ, isn't it? That's that you've developed that EQ, which talks about that empathy, social. Yeah.
Exactly. And the second point, I just wanted to cap something you said that made me smile by writing that down, which, by the way, I think is brilliant. I really do. I mean, it's such a simple thing to do. Where I'm sitting going, of course, because if you think about it, if we've had 10 managers, and maybe you and I were very lucky people, you and me, we only had one dreadful each. But I'll bet we learned more from that one dreadful than the other 9 because they're so seamless. I can't say what they're doing. I don't know what it feels like. But when somebody humiliates you, when somebody's working off that list of yours, you feel it, you internalize it. It's hopefully we don't forget it. And that individual, by having you write it down, brought it up. And I like the fact, take a look at it. Don't bury it somewhere.
Right.
And I think that's what's going down.
We have all of our clients do that. Write down what does dreadful look like, and
all
then
right, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Then we'll have them write down what does dreadful look like, and oftentimes I'll say, "How did that project go?" And they'll talk to me about it, and I'll go, "That sounds like number 3 on your list." And you go, "Oh, crap, you're right. Yes, it does." I got a feeling that list will haunt you a little bit. Yeah.
All right, I want to bring it in for a landing. This is one heck of a big pocket we got going here. But I want 60 seconds because I promised myself I wouldn't let you go without doubling back, but you got to go 60 seconds. Tell me about your dad. You were going to launch into a story about your dad when we first started, and you said, maybe I'll get to that. And I don't ever cut a guy short on that kind of story. What'd you have?
Smartest guy I've ever known that doesn't know anything. So can't read and write, never went to school. He was a poor shepherd from the middle of Spain. That's hence the Garrido, right? And incredibly poor, but incredibly wise. From where he came from to where he ended up in terms of the businesses he ran, still can't read and write. Didn't know anything, but was incredibly intelligent. Intelligence and knowledge, they're not the same thing, right? And he would, his view of the world is just phenomenal. So I'd be running these large organizations, and he would say, "How's work today?" And I would say, "Oh, terrible, I've been fired." Of course, I hadn't been fired, but he was always like, "You should have your own business. You should start your own business." That was just his mentality, right? Because he could never work for anybody else because it was unemployable, right? So he was always start your own business. And he would say to me things like, And I would say, but Dad, I'm running this organization. There's 17,000 people that has billions in revenue. And he'd go, Antonio, he would say, it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. He would say those kind of things. He would say to me, I would say to him, you'll never guess what happened today. He'd go, what? I go, this happened, and this happened, right? And he would go, well, that's because 1 in a million chances happen 9 times out of 10. And I would go, hold on, 1 in a million chances? Like, makes that, does that actually make, it doesn't make sense, but it almost makes sense, right? Because he had this very, very, very unusual way of looking at the world, that he would say things like, do you know what I've been thinking about? I'd say, what? And he would say, I think the moon goes around the earth and the earth goes around the sun. Now you might think, well, yeah, of course it does, but somebody's told you that, Rob, right? You haven't figured that out, right? But he's figured that out based on how he would pull a watermelon on the back of a trolley, right? And when he stops and the watermelon keeps going, right? So really, really just great guy to have a conversation with and talk about business and talk about leadership, which is just stamped on his DNA, as opposed to, he never went to Princeton and got an MBA in leadership, I promise you, but he's the smartest leader I've ever known.
And clearly he had a huge impact, because I know, in looking over your book, there's a lot in there about emotional intelligence.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so now I'm starting to track you a little bit. I'm going, I think I can see we might have had an impact on that one.
Yeah.
Look,
treat people well.
Yeah, no, my dad had a huge impact on me as well. And it's funny how these stories keep coming up, and maybe we call back the journaling. And again, if nothing else, maybe you provide a wonderful gift to your children.
Sure.
To people.
Can I leave you with one thought just before I know you're going to wrap up? Just coming back to that, and I'll ask everybody that, again, that's listening. We talked about Michael Gallagher before, who's Rory McIlroy's coach. And oftentimes I'll say to leaders, who's the best coach you've ever known, dealt with, worked with, right? Who's the best coach you've ever known? And some people say, oh, you. And I go, no. And I go, oh, well, then this no. Well, I once saw a talk by, no. And they go, I don't think I've ever had a coach then. I go, yes, you have. Who is it? And it's their mum. It was their dad. It was the person that taught them how to tie their shoelaces and use a fork and read and walk and talk and all of those things. And so we are all we've got coach stamped on our DNA because we have been coached. And if you've got children, you're a tremendous coach. And we've got to bring that to the workplace, where you care about them more than you, and it's about helping them, and it's about servant leadership and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought I'd leave you with that. And I got that from my dad.
You bet. Well, you capped it off beautifully. The book is called My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership. Boy, how do I keep struggling with your book title? My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. It's those.
Nailed it.
Yeah, nailed it. 7th time, nailed it. I want people to be able to get a hold of you, because I want them to have an opportunity for that assessment as well. So we'll put it up on our website, but how do people get a hold of you?
Real easy, just Antonio at mydailyleadership.com. Genuinely, me or somebody will get back to you real quick. Go to our website, all the W's, mydailyleadership.com. There's tons of free resources on there. Reach out to us. This is what we do. This is all we do. If you've got any kind of thoughts about leadership, or you're interested in developing yourself and your people in your business, give us a call, drop us an email. We genuinely will help you out.
Well, as you've pretty much set a record today for the longest podcast I've done in 3 years, here's a compliment to you. People, I'm not sure I want people to hear this, but I do get asked by guests, how long are we going to go? And in my head, I'm thinking, as long as you're interesting. That's how long we're going to go. So
thank you, sir.
My way of paying you a big compliment. We'd have been done earlier, but it was too daggone interesting. You really had some wonderful leadership pieces. I love the journaling piece. I really believe in assessments for trainers, speakers as well. There's too much unconscious incompetency and unconscious competency out there.
Yeah.
We need another set of eyes on us. So good for
Let's
you.
get together in 6 months' time and do part 2, the revenge.
Yes. That's right. I'll have a Snickers bar because I won't be going anywhere. All right. My man, appreciate it. Listen, really grateful you had the opportunity to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Rob. I've loved it. Thank you, sir.
Right. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everyone. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.